Jamuna Tira Van Radhi Jamuna Tira Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Janavallabha Giripadadhari Gopi Janavallabha Gopi Janavallabha Giripadadhari Suranandana Gajajananda Suranandana Gajajananda Yamuna Tira Van Chariyam Yamuna Tira Van Chariyam Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Punjabi Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hari Bol Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hey Krishna Krishna Nitai Gaur Nitai Gaur Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Gaur Hari Bol Nitai Gaudam Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Sri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai, Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bo. Hare Krishna Mahamantra ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're reading from Canto 8, chapter number 4, entitled Gajendra Returns to the Spiritual World. And this is text 2, 3, and 4. This is text 4 on the board. Pranamya sirasadisham Uttama slokam avyayam Agayate yasodama Kirtaya gunasatkatam Pranamya sirasadisam Uttama slokam avyayam Agayata yasodama Kirtaya gunasatkatam Pranamya sirasadisham Uttama slokam avyayam Agayata yasodama Kirtaya gunasatkatam. Okay. Ladies. Ya, he who. So this is two verses. We're reading 3 and 4 in the transliteration. So that Griha became a crocodile. Sa, he, vai, indeed, sadya, immediately, parama, very nice, ascharya, wonderful, rupadrik, possessing the form of his original Gandharva position. Mukta was delivered, Devala Sapena, by the cursing of Devala Rish, Huhu, whose name was formerly Huhu, Gandharva Sattamaha, the best of the Gandharva Loka, Pranamya, offering his obeisances, Sirasa, by the head, Adisham, unto the Supreme Master, Uttamaslokam, who is worshipped by the choicest verses, Avyayam, who is the Supreme Eternal, Agat Yata, he began to chant, Yasadama, the glories of the Lord, Kirtanya Gunasat Katam, whose transcendental pastimes and qualities are glorious. So we'll go back and read verse 2 and then read these 2 verses. There was a beating of kettle drums in the heavenly planets. The inhabitants of Gandharva Loka began to dance and sing, while the sages and inhabitants of Charna and Siddhaloka offered prayers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Purushottama. The best of the Gandharvas, King Huhu, having been cursed by Devala Rish, had become a crocodile. Now, having been delivered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he assumed a very beautiful form as a Gandharva. Understanding by whose mercy this had happened, he immediately offered his respectful obeisances with his head and began chanting prayers just suitable for the Transcendental Lord, the Supreme Eternal, who is worshipped by the choicest verses. Srila Prabhupada's purport. The story of how the Gandharva became a crocodile will be described later. The curse by which the Gandharva took this position was actually a blessing, not a curse. One should not be displeased when a saintly person curses someone, for his curse indirectly is a blessing. The Gandharva had the mentality of an inhabitant of a celestial planetary system, and for him to become an associate of the Supreme Lord would have taken millions of long years. However, because he was cursed by Devala Rish, he became a crocodile, and only one life was fortunate enough to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face and become promoted to the spiritual world to become one of the Lord's associates. Similarly, Gajendra was also delivered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead when he was freed from the curse of Agastya Muni. Om Agyan Timidandasya Gyana Jana Salakaya Chaksu Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Staptitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadam Mayam Dadati Swapadantikam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So in this verse, both curses and ultimate blessings are being explained. And the key point that is being made here which is actually the result of what has happened, is that one gets blessed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead through his representatives in different ways. So here, what appears to be something that is inauspicious, or what we might say, causing one to go down, actually became something that elevated one to the highest platform. There is one verse in the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Tate nukampam shushimikshamanam pujaneva kripa vivakam vidvahu bir vadada namaste jiveti yo mukti padesha dayabak. Srila Prabhupada quotes this verse quite often in his lectures, and he also says that we should understand this verse as one of the prime features of our practice in Krishna consciousness. And what is the translation? Is that because of the Lord's mercy, or we might say receiving the Lord's mercy because of some material situation, one is what we says causes that person to suffer. And because of that suffering, it causes that person to take shelter of the Supreme Lord more and more. I think this is a common feature of life, that when things go wrong, it becomes more important, necessary to find shelter. And of course, those who are practicing devotional service know that shelter means the Lord's mercy, or to call out for the Lord's mercy. So in that sense, the so-called suffering, or the difficulty that brought about that calling out from the Lord, is actually a great blessing. Queen Kunti, she also makes a nice point in her prayers to Krishna in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. She's Krishna's auntie, and she receives respect from Krishna as a superior. And when she comes in front of Krishna, Krishna touches her feet and offers her nice sweet words in welcoming her. Of course, she knows who Krishna is, and accepting her role as an aunt, she accepts his, but she understands that he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So she takes advantage of that and prays. And what is the prayers that she makes? That these prayers are prayers of those who are surrounded by material wealth, good parentage, good bodily features, so many material boons, they can't really call to you with sincere feelings. And then she goes on to pray, please take these things away, or put me in a situation where I have to call for you with sincere feelings. So this is what's happening here, and it's happening throughout the Shastras. You find so many times a person gets cursed, or something inauspicious happens, and then because of that they become devotees, or they become completely surrendered to the mercy of the Lord. So what appears to be something inauspicious or something detrimental to a person's welfare actually is a great boon. And Prabhupada wants to make this point clear, that indirectly these so-called curses are actually blessings. Many of the demons who came to Vrindavan to challenge Krishna were cursed. We have Kali's serpent. He was Vedasira in a previous life, who was a great sage, who laughed at another sage. And because of that, he was cursed because of his nature of being envious of this other sage. So he took birth as a snake. But fortunately, he came to Vrindavan, and he got the mercy of Krishna, by Krishna dancing on his heads. We have Dhenukasura. He was, I'm not exactly remember what his position was, but he was dancing in front of Durvasa Muni's ashram with 10,000 ladies in a very light, sensuous activity. And Durvasa Muni, you don't mess with him. He said, you want to act like an ass, so you become an ass. So, and then in this previous next lives, he was Dhanuk, who had the service of King Kamsa to guard his orchard in Talavan Forest in Vrindavan. And so, even becoming a demon, one gets the blessings of the Lord. Of course, one can never see that when it's actually happening. But here, with these two personalities, one is the Gandharva. Prabhupada says we will learn about his situation later. But Gajendra was a great king. He was King Indradumna. He was in meditation. He was doing some prayers, and Agastya Muni came along with many of his followers. The king didn't even acknowledge his presence. He said, you don't know the etiquette, you're a great king, you're a leader, and so therefore you're stupid. That's basically what he said. Therefore, if you're stupid, become an elephant. Big, dumb animal. So, and then he becomes an elephant in the higher planets, gets the mercy of the Lord by being attacked by a crocodile. You can say two inauspicious things: falling from his position as an elephant, taking a position as a king, taking birth as an elephant, and now he's trying to enjoy in that body. How much enjoyment you can get in an elephant's body. I mean, Prabhupada says elephants are very inclined to sex life, so we learn a little bit. And then, of course, he gets attacked in his enjoyment along with his family, and all of a sudden the whole thing is apparently inauspicious. But because of previous births, previous connections with devotional service, he calls out to the Lord very feelingly, remembering prayers from his previous birth. And somehow, by the Lord's mercy, he gets saved from this situation and gets to see the Lord first face to face, becomes free from all his material desires, and offers beautiful prayers to the Lord. So I think the point is, as long as one stays in devotional service, no matter what situation you find yourself in, it's always a situation that can be used to come closer to Krishna. I think we can learn from the prayers of Queen Kunti. I mean, we find that sometimes if we get too comfortable or have too much facility, or things are going nicely. Does things go nicely? I guess sometimes they do. And Lord Chaitanya is very kind. He's very merciful. He gives a lot of good blessings to the devotees, and chanting, dancing, feasting, and so much wonderful association. But still, one should never forget the position we're in this material world. And therefore, Krishna wants to remind us, and therefore it says that unless one can feelingly, this is the word that's most important in this particular lesson, feelingly call out from the Lord, one cannot take full shelter of the Lord. I think death is very nice in that sense. It helps us to remind us about, not that death is nice, but it's a good reminder. Like for the materialists, when they think of death, they think, oh my God, there's the end of my plans. Oh, don't remind me of that. Actually, the Shastras have some injunctions that says, if you're a materialist, you have to forget about death. Otherwise, you can't be enthusiastic to fulfill your material plans. That thought will cause you to slow down. You lose your enthusiasm for material life when you keep thinking, if you have to think about death. So don't do that if you're a materialist. For a fixed devotee in devotional service, death is bringing one closer to eternal life with Krishna in the spiritual world. And for a mixed devotee, who's not either pure or a materialist, it's a reminder. It's a nice reminder. Hey, I'm here, and I'm waiting for you. So I'll give you some time. So don't waste it. Take advantage of it and become purified. And And that way when I come, you'll welcome me instead of run from me. So death is a very wonderful guru. It's a nice instructor here. And you'll find both of these personalities are fighting for their life. It's a very difficult situation. They both one wants to kill the other, and the other one's trying to protect himself from being killed by the other and trying to kill the other. So death is right there for both of them. So they're fighting for their lives, and ultimately, all they can do is think, what made the Gandharva so fortunate? He didn't offer prayers. Doesn't mention that he was offering prayer. He was actually winning. He was in his element. Prabhupada describes that. And if you're in an element that is conducive to your execution of devotional service, that also is an asset to help you make progress in devotional service. So Prabhupada makes that point in these verses that one should be in the ashram and where one can make the most advancement. So ashram is a place for spiritual cultivation, so one has to consider, where can I make the most spiritual advancement? Ashram is secondary. Spiritual advancement is first. If one becomes proud of being in a particular ashram, but doesn't take advantage of that for the goal of that ashram, which is Krishna consciousness, then an ashram just leads one away from that practice, and that ashram cannot bring one to perfection. So the Gandharva, he's the crocodile, he's in his element. The elephant's not. And therefore he understands, I really have to call out. So but that's back to that same point. What made the Gandharva so fortunate? And Prabhupada makes this point. It's interesting how he says it in one of his lectures. He says he was holding onto the feet of a devotee. He grabbed onto the feet of a devotee. So then Prabhupada makes the point, just see how auspicious it is to have the hold onto the lotus feet of a devotee. I mean, it's a kind of an unusual lotus feet. I mean, it's an elephant, but, because of the lotus-like devotion, it becomes lotus. So that point is important because that's what actually made the Gandharva get the darshan of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in the sense that he was killed by the Lord. And being killed by the Lord, he actually attained his position. And then, of course, Prabhupada says he actually attained the spiritual world. So we see throughout the Shastras, and it's mentioned so many times, and there's so many examples, that curses actually lead to ultimately higher and higher attainments of spiritual life. Nothing is inauspicious for a devotee. Everything is inauspicious for a non-devotee. Prabhupada makes this point and compares the two, because whatever a non-devotee does leads him more and more down in the material energy. Where a devotee learns, we learn sometimes by getting smashed, by getting kicked, by having something taken away from us, or some difficult situation. Nobody wants that, right? We don't plan that. You don't plan to be miserable, right? Right? Everyone plans to be happy. I was at it was Indra Maharaj's Polish festival. This was like 2001. And I was there, and I was giving a lecture, and I said, everybody gets up in the morning, and first thing they think about is, today I'm going to make plans to become happy. Isn't that correct? And I asked the crowd, there was a crowd there, isn't it correct? Everyone wants to be happy? And there was a large group of people who were saying, no, we want to be miserable. And they were serious. They were just not being facetious. They were actually serious. And I was thinking, the whole philosophy is now upside down. I have to think of a clause to correct this apparent deviation here. But there are some people who live their life like that. Not devotees. Devotees are always planning to serve the Lord. And even if the situation is not very, pleasant, or there's some difficulty in that situation. What is Bhakti Vinod Thakur? He gives it in his prayers. He says, he makes this beautiful prayer in one of his songs, and he goes through, what is my happiness in devotional service? And then he says, and then he mentions different things that might cause one happiness. But he ends the prayer by saying, what is my happiness? The difficulties that I encounter in your devotional service. This is my happiness. Why is he saying that? Because we have something to offer. We have something to offer. It's not that, no, don't get me wrong, it's not that you have to look out for difficulties. It'll come anyway. It's just the way this world is situated. And Krishna allows difficulties to fall upon his devotees so the devotees can take shelter of him more and more. He allows it. Sometimes he sends it, and sometimes he allows it. When he sends it, that's special mercy. When he sends it, is special mercy. When he allows it, then it's an opportunity to, what we say, become more and more detached from those situations that have caused these difficulties. Whatever. In the material world, everything has a dual aspect to it. Nothing is good and nothing is bad. Actually, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu makes a nice point. He says, some people say this is good and some people say this is bad. But I say this is all mental speculation because everything in the material world is bad. But what is good about things in the material world is that it can be used in the service of the Lord. So that makes something bad apparently good. But from the perspective of material, of the item itself, everything is useless. Prabhupada was walking in Mexico City one time, and he was with many of his devotees. And he was passing by this large dumpster, place where you throw your garbage. And on the side of the dumpster there was something written in Spanish. So Prabhupada turned to his devotees and said, well, what does that say? And the devotee said, it says, Prabhupada, place your trash here. Prabhupada said, very good. This is where we should put the whole material world. So you understand the nature of this doesn't see anything valuable in this world except service to the Lord otherwise. Because everything in this world is meant to distract our attention from the real goal of life, unless it's being used in the service of the Lord. So devotees should never be discouraged by inauspiciousness or reverses or apparent difficulties, because everything has a benefit. And if one finds himself in a difficult situation, then one can immediately turn that situation to something auspicious by taking full shelter of the Lord. Sometimes our difficult situations are long-term. Then what do we do? Like one may fall victim to a terminal disease, and then one has to suffer, apparently, for months. That means Krishna has given you extra mercy. He's given you more time to take shelter. More time to take shelter. So in any situation, because we can understand the living entity has nothing to do with this material world. This material world is simply designed to facilitate the inordinate, deviant desires of the living entity to be separated from Krishna to enjoy. So a devotee feels happy knowing that Krishna is always there in any circumstance. But you know what's even worse than difficulties? I think I mentioned it early in the class. When things are happening and things are going nice, then we think, oh, it's not so bad. No, why worry about things? Everything is going good. But that's part of the illusion, because at any second things can change. And that good, what's dangerous about when things are going good, it could distract our consciousness away from Krishna. Therefore, the Shastras tell us that one should see that whatever is happening is the mercy of the Lord, either good or bad, no matter what happens. And then one is always satisfied, and one is always in a position to receive Krishna's mercy. good and bad are all the same in a material world because they're both opportunities to take shelter of Krishna. But the intoxication of when things are going nicely, it causes one to forget Krishna. That's why Queen Kunti, she prays like this. And that's why sometimes Krishna will do that to his devotee. When he sees a devotee going on nicely and forgetting about him. Because the essence of Krishna consciousness is to remember Krishna with devotion, with feeling. Calling out to Krishna, my dear Lord, save me. Save me from this cycle of birth and death which is keeping me away from you in loving devotional service. So a curse apparently has one particular face, but behind that is something wonderful for those whose goal is ultimately not anything in this material world, to go back home, back to Godhead. Okay, the class is not over yet, so we'll ask for questions now. Yes, Shringatirtha?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you very much for your class. As you were talking about mercy, and the devotee needs to change their consciousness in order to appreciate our mercy, I remember one statement I heard from a senior devotee. This is a comment just to support the point. And he said that when you're in the desert and you're really thirsty, you don't care what receptacle is being used to bring you water. If water comes in an envelope, comes in a plastic bag or in a bucket, you will drink it. So I was thinking that material world is such a miserable place, and Krishna is giving us the opportunity to remember him, and whatever form that comes in, we should learn to appreciate it. So it's
yeah, don't mistake the package for the real thing.
The content of the package. Yeah.
It's the content. Okay, it's a nice comment. Yes, Mahalakshmi. Don't worry about that. Still miseries. If you're trying to figure out, well, here I'm drowning. Let's see, did I somehow or other, somebody threw me here, or did I just walk here by mistake? You're there. So don't worry about whether it's coming from Krishna or coming from... In both cases, Krishna is behind the scenes, directly and indirectly, through the material energy. The most important thing is to deal with the situation and not so much worry about it, where it comes from, because you may not be able to figure it out. Is that okay? Yeah. People ask, is it Maya that caused it or Krishna? Another face of Krishna is Maya. Krishna works through the material energy to somehow or other bring his devotee. Or one may act within the material energy, and because of that act, one finds himself in a difficult situation. So Krishna uses Maya as a way to kick us, to bring us back to where we're supposed to be. So behind the Lord, behind everything is the hand of the Lord, in any case. Directly or indirectly? Everything. Yes, Mataji in the back. Prabhupada Priya, right? Okay, I got it. Sridevi, you can ask the question next.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Maharaj, for the very nice class. My question is, you mentioned how Srila Prabhupada said in a purport that the reason that the crocodile got benefited was because he was attached to the foot of a devotee. Mm-hmm. But I was thinking that, he wasn't intentionally taking shelter. He went there with an intention to hurt the devotee. Well, he didn't know it was a devotee, but in any case. So, is there a way that...
you don't try that. That's not the idea. Well, I'm going to step on your foot and then I'm going to grab it afterwards and hold on to it. I don't think that would work. So the point is, somehow or other, this is more like a Gyata Sukriti, unknowingly getting the mercy, because he was in the right place.
But it seems more like an offense, because by offending a devotee, by hurting a devotee, then we actually, lose the benefits of our devotional service rather than gain.
You have to discuss that one with Prabhupada. Prabhupada makes this point. You can find it in his lecture. He said, this is the benefit of holding on to the feet of a devotee. He got the mercy of the devotee. So Prabhupada wanted to give us a side point to somehow, due to his good fortune, although not trying for good fortune, now, we might say, well, Prabhupada's just saying that jokingly. It didn't sound like it when I heard it. It sounded like he was saying, just see how auspicious it is, the lotus feet of a devotee, in any situation.
I guess the conclusion is, somehow or other, be attached to the lotus feet of a devotee.
Better to do it in the right way. Just like Krishna kills demons, so you might think, well, I'll be a demon and you get killed by Krishna, and then I'll get liberation. No, it's better to serve in the way that is pleasing. Lakshmi Moni?
He wasn't really acting as a devotee, so he was kind of incognito. And so Gyata Sukriti, definitely, but he wasn't offending a devotee because he wasn't really acting as a devotee until later on.
Yeah, that's obvious also. No, apparently it was just two ordinary beings fighting. So it's basically a Gyata Sukriti. Sri Devi?
My question is a little different, but I also would like to add my little realization. But the crocodile was acting according to his nature. The species of life are not implicated in sin because they act according to their nature. So he was just doing what a crocodile would do in grabbing Gajendra's foot. That's my thought. My question is, Guru Maharaj, and thank you for this wonderful class. How do we know that we are making advancement even through a period of misery and not getting bogged down and making a big fuss about it? In other words, how do we use the situation to actually make progress?
When you feelingly call out to Krishna, automatically you are in the right position. But how do we make progress? Is that a general question or just a specific question when due to a circumstance?
Yes, because through a period of material suffering, it's very hard for us not to get distracted by what we are going through. So how do we make progress in spite of that? That means keep our focus and keep advancing.
Just using material suffering generally is really a clear indication that we need some shelter. So if we go to self-help books and try to relieve our material suffering in a material way, then that just takes us in the wrong direction, because these things will cause another form of suffering. But you go to Krishna or you go to the lotus feet of a devotee. Going to the spiritual master, going to Krishna is taking shelter. When you go to Krishna, what does Krishna do? He gives you shelter, he protects you from the situation, and then your next step is to learn how to take advantage of that situation and become either detached from something material, educated in something that is helping you become more fixed in Krishna conscious, or actually developing more love for Krishna. So a situation can cause us to become more enlightened in knowledge, more detached in our material ways, or more attached to Krishna. So in any situation, it's auspicious. It's auspicious.
Thank you.
Yeah. And sometimes you can't solve the material situation. You just have to tolerate it. That's all. But that tolerance is, when you don't take shelter of Krishna, is miserable.
Thank you very much.
Yes, Prabhu. Yes. We have over here. Ekalavi, you can go next.
Hare Krishna. You spoke about some in those suffering conditions. It's much easier to get that access to seeking Krishna's shelter. But you also mentioned that always we should be seeking that shelter, also in the good situations. So
Apparently good.
Apparently good, yes. So maybe in relationship to that you can speak about how to approach the deities in the daily programs.
How do we take darshan of the deities?
How do we approach the deities? With which?
Prabhupada says there's 3 things you should do when you're standing before the deities. And he gives us a clear indication. In one lecture he says, the first thing you do is you offer your obeisances, and then you say, my dear Lord, I'm so fallen, I'm your devotee, but still I'm so fallen, and then I don't have any devotion. In other words, you sort of open your heart and say, in a very humble way. And then the next thing you do is you say, and then you start to glorify the Lord. Glorify His mercy, glorify His qualities, His name, something you can say to glorify the Lord. This is all done in your mind and heart. And the last thing you do is you ask for seva. So this is actual standing before the deities, coming before the deities. These three things are actually the proper way to approach the Lord. Not like, well, I'm doing all right, Lord, and it's because of your mercy, so keep it going. And I'll be back. I got some more prayers. That's not exactly the way to approach the Lord. So, yeah, it's humility, glorification, request for seva. When we're standing before the deities, we should always ask for seva. What can I do? And then you find sometimes that immediately you find yourself having the opportunity to do some service. Just to come without asking is not coming. Darshan has a price. Ekalavya. And after Ekalavya. Yeah.
Thank you, Maharaj. Maharaj, you mentioned that the terminal disease is extra mercy because...
Well, it can be.
Can be.
I'm not saying it is. It's extra. It can be.
So in this relation, could you please share with us your thoughts regarding the statement of His Holiness Bhakti-tirtha Swami Maharaj, who said, Maharaj, it just doesn't get any better than this.
Are you referring to a particular incident? So Ekalavya is asking about a particular incident when His Holiness Bhakti-tirtha Maharaj was leaving the world. And he was hearing Chaitanya Charitamrita read from Radhanath Swami, and they were alone. And Maharaj was narrating that at that time he was in a very painful situation. That day was more painful than he had ever experienced before. And so he was using all his energy to acquiesce attention as much as he could. And therefore he became at one point absorbed in hearing it. And then at one point Radhanath Maharaj said to him, do you want a break? He offered to give him something like a glass of water or something. And And he also says, are you feeling, pain? And Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj said, it doesn't get any better than this. So he was actually experiencing life from the heart and not from the body or mind. His heart was he entered into the pastimes of what he had heard. And therefore he was feeling ecstasy. So the next thing he said is continue. Don't stop. So this is an example of how one situation, although very severely, maybe for some of us it would be too much, but it's an example to teach that there is something beyond the body and mind that we can enter into and become free from that. And that's the idea, is somehow to transcend the situations in this world. And you have to practice that. How do you practice? By actually developing good japa. Because when your japa is strong, your mind becomes strong. And it takes a strong mind to stay fixed in Krishna consciousness. So Prabhupada said a devotee has a strong mind and a soft heart. He said that about himself. He said, I have a mind of an English army officer and a heart of a Bengali mother. Now Prabhupada was describing, and he was kind of teaching us that our mind should be fixed in our devotionals, and our heart should be moved with kindness and compassion towards others. And this is basically what he was teaching. So yeah, but if our minds are weak, and minds become weak when there's too much sense gratification. When the mind becomes weak when we overly indulge in things that are unnecessary. And it's hard to focus. So when we find ourselves in difficult situations, the situation might cause us to become overwhelmed. But therefore, you have to practice to keep the mind fixed on Krishna's holy name and devotional service. Yeah. Prabhu and yeah. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Welcome to Mayapur.
Thank you. Just reflecting on the verse that you quote, Tate Nikanapanto Shishramina.
Yeah.
Very famous verse. That we know that usually when things are going good for us, for anyone, we don't think of God. We don't think, oh, this is God's mercy. We tend to think more about this is our expertise. When things are nice, nobody really think of God.
Yeah, we make plans to make sure it keeps going.
Yeah. But however, when things are very bad, then we start thinking, oh, God, please help me out. So like when Mother Kunti, when she's praying to
Right.
Krishna, that please give me misery, give us trouble, because that time we can think of you. And because that verse starting in Kankapantam with devotees, it's not that the devotees don't have problem, but they tolerate it.
Yeah.
And by tolerance, then they're able to overcome it. Mm-hmm. In this way, they're able to become more Krishna conscious. So it's a lot of good correlation between that verse starting in Kankapantam.
Yeah.
And Mother Kunti praying for problems, Krishna, give us trouble so that we can see you.
Yeah, that verse is the epitome of tolerance. In that particular verse. Tate nukampa shushimik. But Prabhupada makes this point. He said, as long as you're in the material world, you're in a difficult situation. So happiness and distress is superfluous to actually our condition of being in the material world. So we get reminded sometimes. Any question on this side? Any ladies have any more questions? Yes, over here. We want to balance it out here. Okay. Is there another question on the other side? Okay, but we can come back. So, and then that'll be the last question. We'll have to end the class after that. It's on its way. Pass it up this way. Okay.
Queen Kunti says that take away all the opulences and everything so that she can remember Krishna. And also in Bhagavad Gita it is said that one who is a devotee and dies untimely or couldn't progress in Krishna consciousness, he takes birth in a family which is
Suchinam Simbatam Gehe.
So how do we understand this, that Queen Kunti is asking, take away all my opulences and all the comforts so that she can remember Krishna, and at the same time a devotee takes birth, if he couldn't finish, and he comes back in a good family, an opulent family and all the comforts.
She also makes that point that these things, Janma, Aishwara, Shruti, Shribir, Ekamano, Avapumam, she makes that point in another verse that these things can cause one to forget Krishna. And therefore she doesn't want these things if they're causes of forgetfulness. So there is two aspects to that due to one's pious and devotional activities in a previous life, one comes into a situation in their next life where they don't have to struggle for these things, and one can focus on devotional service. But the other thing is that the tendency, especially in Kali Yugas, when one is born in this good family, one uses these things to further their material life. So from that perspective, she's offering a prayer. So we shouldn't look forward to a good birth in the next life. Forget that. As Prabhupada said, if whatever birth you take in next life, whatever held you back in this life from making it to the spiritual world, you'll have to face it again in your next life. So there's no guarantee you'll go up. So finish in this life. And that's the idea. And the opportunity is here because Mahaprabhu's mercy is very strong. It's concessionary, but for a devotee, it's not desirable. Not at all. What is his name? Prabodhananda Saraswati says, liberation and an elevation to a better material situation. He calls birth in the higher planets is Akash Pushpayate. And that it's just simply it's just like a phantasmagoria. And flowers in the sky, when he calls liberation hell. And he's thinking in terms of how Mahaprabhu's mercy is so strong, that these things are so insignificant that they don't even exist. To get a good birth, or even to get liberation. He only wants devotion. And that's our nature. So don't look at the concessions as something that it's there, but it's not for us. Devotee wants to look forward to devotional service, not to get a better material situation. Okay, so one more question from the other side there. Is that okay? Okay. Everyone has the full opportunity to go back home, back to Godhead in this life, Prabhupada said. Just take advantage of it.
Working? Hare Krishna. If we properly hold the lotus feet of devotee by following his instructions, chanting, how we stay fixed in this, like to never forget, never let it go, like that? What's the most important part that keep us there?
To be grateful for what you have received. When you're grateful for something, you take advantage of that. I mean, you appreciate it more. if we don't appreciate the fact that we're here in Mayapur and we have such wonderful association, such wonderful prasadam, such great opportunities for kirtan and classes, if we just think, oh, okay, I'm here. But if we appreciate it, when you appreciate something, you take advantage of something more. It's like if you have a jewel, and if you just let it lay on your table and you just, maybe it gets pushed around, gets full of dirt, maybe somebody picks up and you can't find it. But when you have a jewel, you keep it very careful. You secure it nicely and you make sure nothing happens to it. So the mercy is a form of jewel. And so we want to take advantage of that, appreciate it. And another way, which is also part of the same thing, is to give it to others. When you start giving it to others, you also start to appreciate it more. And they also benefit too. Yeah. Sometimes gifts are not understood in that way. They would just think, oh, yeah, I deserve it. Well, we have to stop because we're a little bit away, kind of over time. So thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Swami Maharaj Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.